Even if you think of like animals and when they go to give birth, right? What do? They nest, they find their little place, they get it all ready. Dogs will pull, fabric or sticks if they're outside or whatever, and they get their little area ready. It's usually in like a covered area that's safe. And most animals go into labor in the evening, and that is not an accident. So if you can spend more time at home before heading into your birthplace, you're going to be more comfortable. That labor is going to get into its nice rhythmic motion, and your contractions can become longer, stronger, and closer together before heading to your birthplace.
Getting pregnant and giving birth are two of the most exciting things you can ever hope to experience in this life. The moment you think you could be pregnant, you're frantically searching for all the best information, which is why you're here today. I'm Stephanie King, and with my many years of experience as a professional childbirth educator, doula, and lover of all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I'm here to make preparing for your birth enjoyable, empowering, and totally easy. Each week, I'll cover different topics, interview professionals, and get into the nitty-gritty birth stories from mamas just like you. And when you're ready for more, you can join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I take you step by step through exactly how to prepare your mind, body, spirit, and partner for a birth you love. So let's get started.
Irish Fire 29 is our reviewer of the week, and she says, binge worthy. This podcast has been such a great help to me throughout my past 2 pregnancies. I love the host's approach to presenting the facts in a balanced, non-fear-based way. I often search through the episodes to find content relating to questions I had. Examples like what to do if I tested positive for GBS, my options for natural induction, and pelvic floor health. So thankful for this podcast. It's the one I recommend to pregnant friends who ask. Thank you so much for that review. You guys, it is a highlight for me to be able to read these, so please keep them coming. Now, before I get started, if you have not done this yet, and I will put a link in the show notes, we shoot it out with our emails as well, but definitely get over to myessentialbirth.com and download the 3 free exercise guide. This guide is going to help you with things that you can do. It's not like a workout guide by any means. It is ways that you can stretch and move and strengthen your body to help you have a more comfortable and easy birth, which I promise is what all of you are looking for. And they're simple. It is an easy guide. It'll walk you through. And once you get the guide, you'll also get a bunch of freebies and stuff that entire week as well. So go and download the guide if you haven't done that already. Now, today's episode is all about how long is my labor going to be. And while it is a trickier subject, because obviously I cannot pinpoint that perfectly for anybody, there are some things in the ways of like time and what we know as averages and other things that can affect the birth process that can tell us a little bit about how long your labor might actually be. So I feel like this question is probably really, really common for all moms, but especially first-time moms, because I think we haven't done this before. We're just curious about all the things that could possibly be going on, which is super normal. And this is one of the questions that come up, kind of like when you're figuring out if you're pregnant. Like, how do I know if I'm pregnant? And you Google all the things, and now you're probably on ChatGPT, like, tell me all the research behind, all those things. But the truth is, sometimes you don't know till you have the skipped period, and that's going to be the same for this. The truth is, you're not going to know till you actually go through it, but there are some averages and things. So if this is your second birth or more, then probably what you've heard is, well, second time babies tend to come faster. We're also told that you go into labor a little bit earlier, right? Average wise. So as with like a first time mom, she might go into labor 41 plus 1 is what we say is the average for a first time mom. And for second time moms, it's definitely down in the 40-week area, right? Or even earlier. And the truth of that is great information, but you go into labor when you go into labor. And if you're anything like me, I guess my body just is like, oh yeah, I heard the averages. Let's just trick her just a touch and make her go longer with each birth with each pregnancy before she goes into labor. Literally, that's what I did. And my labors did not follow any of these averages. So to put your mind at ease for all you moms who are like, for sure it's going to be this way, it won't. The second that you try to say that it's going to be a certain way for anything, it's just not going to be. So we will follow along and we'll play the game and it'll be fun. And then you guys will have to come back and share with me what that was. So, and the thing about averages or just how things are marked in general, I want you guys to understand that everything is done on a bell curve. So the averages are just where the majority of people landed within a certain amount of space for whatever you're measuring. In this case, we're going to measure length of labor. And there are normal variations on either side that like were weeks earlier or weeks later. So in this case, it'll be that we're much shorter or much longer. So keep that in mind as we're talking about these things. There are a few things that can influence how long that labor is, though. And so I definitely want to dive into some of those bullet points as well. I also want to touch on this. So oftentimes we get to hear, oh, I had a 36-hour labor. I had a, however, and it sounds like this like crazy amount of time. And while that might be true in the sense that, yes, you felt your first contraction at this time and then you had your baby 36 hours later, it does not mean 36 hours of active labor. And so I want to go over the stages just a touch so that you understand that. But there is a period of time before labor really gets moving, meaning you cannot ignore it anymore. You're not guessing if you're in labor anymore. They're forcing you to give them your attention. You're having to focus and breathe through them. There's no wondering if labor is beginning or has begun. You are in the thick of it. That's what we call active labor. These averages include the early first stage of labor, the active first stage of labor, and the second stage of labor, which is your pushing stage. And in between those, there's a transition phase. So we've got first stage labor, transition, and a active pushing stage, which is your second stage. And it includes all of that. Now, transition, we have like a first stage, second stage. Transition is often the shortest part of labor. Some women go through it, don't know they have. Others are like, holy cow, what was that? But oftentimes, most of the time, almost all the time, it is the shortest part of labor. So not to fear, you will not be in transition for hours and hours and hours. That's not how it works. It's kind of that final stretch to complete everything before you get those pushing contractions and it's time to push and have your baby. And the pushing can take a couple of hours. But let's go over some of that. So for first-time moms, they say the average is between 12 and 20 hours of labor. Now remember, that's not all the like active crazy stuff. It's also the when your contractions are 10 minutes apart or 7 minutes apart and not lasting very long. And you can still talk through them and walk through them. All of that is included in that. So the active portion of that is said to be 6 to 12 hours. So that's probably more commonly what you hear is labor is about 6 to 12 hours for a first-time mom. And that's because that is just the active portion of it. Pushing is another 1 to 3 hours. So all those things combined, and you're looking at 12 to 20 hours of labor. For second-time moms and beyond, the average is 6 to 12 total, with an active amount being 4 to 6 hours, and your pushing stage only 5 to 30 minutes. Now, again, these are averages. There are first-time moms that go very quickly. There are first-time moms that take a longer time, and same with second. There are second-time moms that'll follow that, and they'll go a little bit quicker, and second-time moms that take a little while. Like I said, I'm one of those moms. I have a lot of prodromal labor. So I have real labor contractions for, in my case, a couple of days. At my last one, I had it every single day for a week before I went into actual labor. And then I hit that active stage, and my active stage took a while, and then my pushing took a while. So, and I think some of that is dependent too on the fact that even though my second was a VBAC, so a baby had gone through there before, my third, because I had an epidural with my second, my third, a lot of the reason that I was pushing for so long, and I was in that water for 4 hours, and I always say, don't worry, mama, this won't be you. But I could have pushed that baby out earlier. I was scared. And so that's definitely some of it. It's not just like your body mechanically follows this and it is what it is. Sometimes, and oftentimes, your environment or how you're feeling about everything that's happening to you has a bearing, a weight on it too, especially if you are unmedicated. So keep that in mind as well. So let's talk about a couple of those things, the things that factor in to how long your labor might be. So I just gave you a bunch of averages. Don't worry, we're going to include it in the email this week if you're on the email list, and it'll definitely be in the show notes as well. But I know I moved past that quickly. So those are the averages. I want to talk about what weighs on that a little bit. And one of the things that came up actually, just as we were like getting all the background for this, was cervical dilation was one of the things that was mentioned on things like ACOG or World Health Organization or PubMed or whatever, right? And I thought it was so interesting because I'm like, cervical dilation doesn't tell you anything. And so what's interesting is the reason that it was mentioned is cervical dilation. So it depends on how you're measuring all of this, right? Because it's if you're basing it off cervical dilation, it says first-time moms experience slower cervical dilation. And that's great. It's good to know. It's good for you to know, especially if you are headed into a hospital and you plan on having vaginal exams. Because once you're in the hospital, the idea is they want you to, for whatever reason, show that you are dilating about 1 centimeter an hour, as if your body knows to do that, or if anybody said that that's what it's going to be. Our bodies dilate all different kinds of ways and at all different times. I have seen, I am not even joking, a mom who was at 4 centimeters be complete within 3 minutes. And the truth of the matter is dilation doesn't tell you anything. So if they can say average over time, the more moms we check, the slower they dilate, you think that would actually be in a favor for a first-time mom to be given a little bit more time, right, to labor before they're bugging her about stuff, but that's not always the case. And so if you're hearing this and you are a first-time mom and you are giving birth in a hospital, this is something I want you to tuck away so that if you are having those vaginal exams, you're like, oh gosh, she's still only, quote, quote, right? She's still only at 5 centimeters and she's been like that for 4 hours. Hey, mama, that's normal. You are going to just take your time and your body's going to do what it's going to do. If, on the other hand, you're hearing that you're dilating faster, okay, great, wonderful, right? The only time it's really like rough news to hear is when they say it's the same dilation over and over. But I want to encourage you that it doesn't mean anything. Dilation means nothing. Your body is doing wonderful work with every single contraction, and that baby is coming closer and closer to meeting you, I promise. So stay strong. Another one is baby's position, though. And this is very real. If a baby that's not in like the ideal quote unquote position to give birth, which we say left occiput anterior or LOA, which means nothing to you. It means that your baby's head is aimed down and their back is on the left side. They're kind of turned to the left just a touch with the back in the front of the belly, right? But if a baby, for whatever reason, is posterior, meaning that they're coming with their face, if you were to give birth, you see their face looking at you. So that puts the back of their head towards the back of your spine. And not only is it uncomfortable for you, which you can feel during the labor process because they're pushing their head, the back of their head bone against your backbone, pelvis bones that are back there, but also they have to work harder to work through the pelvis. It can be a little trickier, and their head has to do some more molding because of the space from being in that position and that direction. So yes, you can absolutely give birth to a posterior baby, but on top of the fact that it's going to be probably a little bit more uncomfortable for you, which is just going to take more time and relaxation and all of your focus, that baby is going to need some extra time to work through there. And that's totally normal and it's totally okay. Same with a breech baby. Breech babies, they may or may not take a little bit more time to kind of work their way through. The interesting thing about a breech baby is if you think about it, breech means that their bum is coming out first and their head is up top. And this is provided you are having a vaginal birth at this point, which I'm going to, in the show notes, just in case you are curious at all, I'm just going to keep loading this information for you guys so that you understand that breech is just another variation of normal. And if you want to give birth vaginally, it can be done safely. You just need to be with a good skilled provider. So I'm going to make sure that in the show notes, we're going to put the information from Breech Without Borders so that you guys can get in touch with somebody if your baby is breech and you would like to birth vaginally. But that breech position, if you have a bum, a cute, soft, squishy bum coming through the cervix first, dilation is going to take a little bit longer. And guess what? It's totally normal because you don't have this nice hard head hitting against the cervix to help spread and open it. So what's funny is you can actually have a baby's little bum head right through that cervix before it is completely dilated, because it can kind of like slip and slink through just a touch where a head couldn't. It's too big and too hard. It's not going to be able to do that. So if you're working with somebody skilled, that's totally an option for you, but it can take just a touch longer for things to work their way out and do their thing, or not. But that is definitely a positional thing, can cause some issues. That's the same with a baby who has like their hand by their head. That can take a little bit more time to work through. It can also be a little bit more traumatic downstairs as they come through the canal, but especially the pushing phase could take a little bit longer. And if you have a baby that doesn't have their chin to their chest, which is why those 3 exercises that I talked about at the beginning of our episode today, it's why they're so important. One of the reasons we do pelvic tilts and we do squats is because it encourages baby's chin to be on their chest, which encourages the smallest part of their head to be coming out of the vaginal canal first, or heading into the pubic area first. And that alone is going to make things easier and more comfortable both for you and baby to work their way through. So like I said, those exercises are linked, but if you're curious, it's myessentialbirth.com/3 exercises, and you can grab them there. The other thing that you can do for something like that is to see a Webster certified chiropractor. Now, if you don't have a provider nearby that does vaginal breach, or this is something you're not interested in for whatever reason, you don't want to give birth like that, then there are exercises and wonderful things that you can do to help turn a baby. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's wonderful. If they stay. Sometimes they don't. I just had a really great conversation with Bonnie Baker, who is a midwife. We just recorded earlier today, actually, and you guys are going to have that episode come out as well. We had a really great conversation at the end of that episode about if you're going to do something like an ECV or an external cephalic version where they manually turn the baby. They like grab the head on the outside of your belly and they grab the bum on the other side of your belly and they just twist that baby. If you can have it done earlier, it is better. And we were talking about that because it's so interesting to me that providers are like, yeah, you can't do it until like 35 to 37 weeks. And then the baby is like locked into position. But the idea behind it is, yeah, well, they need to be big enough that when we move them, they don't have room to move back. And I disagree. And she disagreed too, and it made me so happy. So if you can get that done earlier, it is better. Also, if you're in the birth course, we have a whole section on how to flip a breech and things that I've used personally. She actually talked about what she had done to flip her baby. There is absolutely, if your baby is willing and it is the right position for them to be in, you can flip them and they will stay. So definitely look into those resources as well. Movement is going to be huge as well. So if you are able to use movement during labor, meaning you're able to walk and sway and get on a yoga ball or be in hands and knees or take time in the shower, then your labor will actually progress quicker, generally speaking, and you'll be more comfortable if you can do those things. So it helps when a mom is in labor and she all of a sudden is like, oh, I need to move, I need to sway, and you see her just doing these motions, it's not just her trying to escape her pain, although sometimes it certainly looks like that, right? No, not at all. It is her body is telling her to do these things. It is you and your baby working in this incredible rhythmic motion to get that baby to move through the birth canal down and out. And mothers do it instinctually, but they need to have the ability to do that. If you have an epidural, it's going to be a little trickier. And so what's interesting to me is these averages that we have with these longer amounts of time, which sometimes you're going to have a long labor no matter what, but they include women with epidurals, which sometimes can speed up a labor, but oftentimes can slow it down, depending on when they get it too. So if you're a mom and you come in and you're 4 centimeters dilated and they choose to admit you, because sometimes they're actually waiting until it's closer to 6 centimeters now, but if they admit you and you want to get an epidural right away, your labor might take a little bit longer. We've got to use Pitocin. Hopefully you have somebody that's helping you move your body to wiggle that baby down. You can't feel, what's happening down there. So they want to let the epidural wear off a little bit so that when you're feeling the pushing, you can actually bear down, or the pushing stage takes a long time because you can't feel. There's just some different things that happen with an epidural. Also, any effects it has on the baby. And so if it's like, oh, shoot, baby's heart rate doesn't like the Pitocin, now we got to back off from that. That's going to extend the time. So those are also things that can kind of speed up or slow down that as well. If you do have an epidural, it is really important to be able to move your body around. Babies love that. They can get in better positions. So if you do have an epidural, make sure that you have your nurse or husband, somebody that can help you turn from side to side. Use a peanut ball, lean up a little bit on top of your belly. You can even do like a squatted position when it comes to pushing with an epidural. So you definitely have some options if you have an epidural. Another thing that can make it a little bit more comfortable for you is laboring longer at home, because you have your freedom of movement, you can eat and drink, you don't have anybody bugging you, pricking you, walking in at random times. You can be more in your zone, and your body is just more comfortable in your own environment. Even if you think of like animals, and when they go to give birth, right? What do? They nest, they find their little place, they get it all ready. Dogs will pull, fabric or sticks if they're outside or whatever, and they get their little area ready. It's usually in like a covered area that's safe, and most animals go into labor in the evening. And that is not an accident. And women are very much the same. It is really, really common for a mom to go into labor at night in her home, in her bed in the dark. And it's because it's safe, it's comfortable, you're relaxed, and that's how it should be. So if you can spend more time at home before heading into your birthplace, you're going to be more comfortable. That labor is going to get into its nice rhythmic motion, and your contractions can become longer, stronger, and closer together before heading to your birthplace. So environment is actually a big part of what can also affect how quick or slow your labor goes. If you set up your birth team to be really supportive people in a hospital that's really supportive, or in a birth center or home birth, where the people that are in your birth space believe in you, trust the process of birth, and don't treat it like an emergency, then your body will react to that. But on the same token, stress, fear, lack of support, all of that can stall a labor, can stop a labor, can make it more painful for mom. Even just the transfer from home to hospital. And that's why we say wait till you're in a good, strong contraction pattern before going in, to where you really, really need to focus. There's no turning back, because even that movement from one location to the other, that adrenaline that kicks in and everything, can slow or stall a labor completely. It's the same with who you have come into your birth space, and wherever you're at, right? If you don't have a good relationship with your mom, for example, and she comes walking through the door, like everything tightens up, everything. And labor, like the contractions become sporadic. It throws off your groove. You're half in labor land, half wondering why she's here. And maybe it's not your mom. Maybe you have a great relationship with your mom. But if somebody comes into that birth space that you are not comfortable with, same thing. And it shouldn't be your provider. If you have that reaction to your provider during labor, that is going to be a tougher labor. And if that's who you have, that's what you have to deal with, then you better build up the rest of your birth team, your doula, your partner, your mom, whoever is going to be on your side and comforting you and protecting you, because that is a space that needs to be just perfect and in every way comfortable for you to feel safe and vulnerable and be able to birth your baby in that situation. And honestly, a lot of this goes along with being prepared, being educated. You moms that are listening right now on the podcast you're going to be some of the best prepared people. You're curious, and you are getting all the information that you can. You're working on education. You're learning all the things possible. Hopefully, you're doing a lot of the physical things that we talk about here. You are preparing yourself in every way to be able to give birth. So women that are prepared and they understand the process are able to listen to their bodies and trust their bodies and lean on their intuition, and they've prepped their birth partner and they can lean on their birth partner so that you're prepared in every way to give birth the way that you desire. And along with that, I'm going to tell you to take a really awesome birth course. So find one that you love. myessentialbirth.com is a pretty good one, if I do say so myself. Plus, you'll get access to me, which is wonderful, and you'll be fully prepped to be able to have the birth that you desire. Now, Another thing that may or may not cause things to speed up or can prolong it is induction or augmentation. So, induction means that labor hasn't begun and you need to come to the hospital for a medical way to induce that labor. Augmentation means labor has been going and it's had a little stall, and for whatever reason, they feel like we need to pick things up and get it moving again. Both of these use some different medical methods, especially if you're in a hospital setting, obviously. So an induction means that your labor is starting. It's usually the night before, and it starts with some kind of Cervidil or prostaglandin of some kind that they insert vaginally to help soften your cervix if it is not soft already. And then they can include any kind of breaking of the waters or a Foley bulb or some way to dilate the cervix and get things moving and get contractions going. So oftentimes you come the night before, they want to insert stuff vaginally and all of that. You're hooked up to all the monitors. You probably didn't sleep well. And contractions may or may not begin at that time, even if they're not meant to. And then you head into labor in the morning. And that's a very common way to do it. I still don't know why they do it overnight because mom needs to sleep, like come in the morning and have a long labor instead. That would be my preference. So maybe if it were me, I would totally say like, no, I need to be able to come in the morning. But you guys, you do you, whatever feels good. But with that induction, sometimes it can really kick things in and the process is going and here we go. But oftentimes because they do things slowly, which they should, and they're just adding a little bit of Pitocin at a time, or they're waiting for the Cervidil to do its thing, or it can kind of lengthen things out. And then because of the fact that we are using Pitocin, which is an artificial form of the body's oxytocin, then it can take a little bit longer. And those contractions become stronger and a little bit more intense earlier in the labor. So then we're talking about an epidural, which again can kind of lengthen things out. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's just so you know if you end up going in for an induction that it can be a little bit longer. And lastly, there are a couple medical conditions that may or may not make things take a little bit longer, which could be something like gestational diabetes or hypertension. And oftentimes that's just because of the extra monitoring, or maybe there's medication that needs to be involved or other factors as you work through the process of labor that are having to be managed, or interventions that are needing to be used because of those other factors. So if you are more of a high risk mom or you have some underlying medical things, then those will also be, part of what they take into account. It doesn't always mean that it's going to extend your labor by any means. It's just that it could. So that's why we listed it. So to recap on the timelines, if you are a first-time mom, they say total time is about 12 to 20 hours, with 6 to 12 hours being active labor and 1 to 3 hours being your pushing time. If you are a second-time mom plus, they say your average labor is 6 to 12 hours, with 4 to 6 hours being your active stage and 5 to 30 minutes for your pushing stage. Now, I know I have moms here who have given birth before, who are like, yeah, sure. And I can relate to that 100% because it was my third baby that I pushed that nice long time for. But as we talked about, there are other factors and other things that can happen. So it is not uncommon for a second-time mom to have a quicker labor and definitely be pushing a little bit less. Once you have a baby that has paved their way through there, it does seem to go a little bit smoother. And so for those of you who are listening, just know these are averages. They are helpful in a sense. But really, once labor begins and you are headed into labor land and you've got good, strong contractions and you are focused on what you were doing, your time goes away. Like this is interesting stuff. You're going to wonder afterwards, wait, how long was I in labor? But one of the things that we tell parents is, hide the clock. Don't let mom be staring at a clock. Don't give her a phone so that she can be just, going nuts and looking at the time all the time. It's going to make you crazy. It's almost like a dreamlike state when you are in labor. It's why we call it labor land. And time works differently in labor land. 5 minutes can take an hour and an hour can take 5 minutes. So once you are in there, truly, the time passes weird and it will just pass. Like it'll blow your mind that you're like, holy cow, that was 4 hours ago that we had that conversation. Like, wow. And then you realize all the hard work that you've been doing and you're like, okay, like I'm doing it. I can do this. So timing is fun, but trust your body, trust your intuition. continue with the awesome knowledge that you are gaining right now and just trust the process. Labor is so much fun. If you are like me at all, it is the best part of pregnancy. And just birth is so incredible because it's not only, it gives you something to do. Every bit of it you are like extremely involved in. You're connected to your baby throughout the process. And then at the end, when you've done it, it's just like, whoa, how did that happen? And we are so perfectly created to bring these babies to us, and they are so perfect for us. And it's just a reminder, of the divinity of birth and that you are the perfect mother for your baby and that everything you're doing right now is just part of the process and you're doing a great job.
If you loved what you heard today, the very best way to support this podcast and help other moms to find it is to leave a quick review. I read one at the beginning of the episodes, and I would love for yours to be next. And if you're ready for even more pregnancy, birth, and postpartum goodness, come join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I will hold your hand and walk you through pregnancy and birth step by step so you're totally prepared for a birth you'll love. See you next week.